How you doing? This is Andrew from FloryPB. Today we're doing something a little different. We're going to be restoring this old A4 Fly Rasta edition. This is a customer's gun, and we're going to strip this whole thing down right now, soap it up, get it in the ultrasonic cleaner we have for it, and then in the later video, or later on when we splice it together, we're going to build it back up, tune it, and get it working the way it should be. We're just going to start simply, remove some of this extra crap on it. Get that out of the way. He's actually kind of loose. No barrel on this. He shipped it without the barrel, saved a little bit on shipping. These two screws I'm doing here, this is your bottom line stuff. You should be familiar with that as is. This is all standard threaded stuff on an Angel. Even this generation of mini reg, this is standard threaded. So we're going to pull this apart, rebuild this as well. We don't have to take this off as long as it's not leaking the macro line fitting. But first I got to get rid of this little C-clip in here. I don't know if you guys can see in there. Let's see if we can make it work. Well, if you guys see that little C-clip in there, we got to get rid of that. And it's actually a little screwed up as is, so we might have to replace it. Then we'll get the piston out and go from there. Here's my little jeweler's pliers. I'll leave it tight in. Just going to get it in here with the C-clip. C-clip's a little bent. We're probably going to end up replacing this one. Now the piston's got to come out. Usually you can tap it a couple times, but it's a little stuck. Not surprising. Let's give it a little lube, see if we can give it a little love in the future and get it out after a little bit. Worst case, we'll shoot a little air up here and hopefully pop it out. Leave that in the tray, let it soak. Of course, it's not going to play right with me. I'll carry on with the marker. I like to strip the electronics out as early as I can. There's no screws on this side, so I replace the grip frame screws. That's kind of cool. Trigger's all jammed up, but it's got a Virtue board in it. That's pretty unique. Pull the battery. I don't know if it's good. Wires for the solenoid. The eyes are ribbon eyes still, because it's an old Fly. All WDP eyes stock are ribbon eyes. Be very gentle taking those apart. Pop it over. The grips take a 2.5 millimeter Allen key. The grip screws, I mean. There's my little parts tray. I'm going to shove everything in there to keep it all organized. This marker needs a good cleaning. Now this mat I'm on is an anti-static mat, if I haven't told you guys before. So it's really good to do the electronics with it, because it prevents them from getting hung up, or getting fried rather. So it's a little snug. Very gentle with this kind of stuff. Make sure the static's off of it. I'm not even going to put it in the tray. I'll put the screws in it though. So next I want to get in here, get out my on-off switch, which I don't think is actually connected to anything. Pull out my solenoid, which I pull out through this screw here. It's going to attack. Ooh, look at that. Anything else want to come out of you? There we go. And a third one. All the buttons are out. We're going to pull these two screws next. The countersunk screws on the back cap. That's a 2mm Allen head, or Allen key you need for it. Now normally there's a spring here, but I don't know what's going on with this one, so let's see if there's still a spring. Yeah, it's not really springing out. Usually this wants to spring out because your breech rod has a spring to help push it back in, and it rests against its back. Okay, there we go. All right, nothing crazy there. That got snipped, so it just stayed there. Here's the spring. Oh, okay, that's not coming out easy. Get the parallel jaw pliers. These always have a little spot on them. That's kind of flat. Not too bad. Got to derust this a little bit, clean it up. It'll be good to go. I'm going to pull this one next. This set screw up here. This is your 2.5mm socket, or 2.5mm Allen wrench. Just bring it up so it's above flush. You can leave it in. This part's supposed to just slide out. I like to put my Allen key in it sometimes. So much dirt coming out of here. Put my Allen key in it. Use it as a little lever. Ooh, that's dirty. That's going in the parts washer. We can lift our solenoid out. That's a little manifold for it. Be very gentle with the wires. They slip out fairly easily. There we go. So solenoid's out. Solenoid looks like it's in good condition. We'll find out later. These are pretty robust. You don't have a lot of angels with solenoid problems. Both gaskets are on the manifold for it. Leave it off to the side for now. Electronic stuff. Pull the bolt out. It's a soft face bolt, but the soft face broke off of it. It's not the best. I'll talk to the guy about it, see if he wants a replacement or what he wants to do with this. Doesn't look bad in there. Still has the seal. This seal is crucial. The tightness of your roto breech and your seal is basically what makes your angel efficient or not. It's a very serious thing to have this thing set up correctly. I'll show you guys how to do it. I'm going to pop this little cap out too, just for a full cleaning. Get our 1.5. No, it's not even a 1.5. Gotta grab another set of Allen keys. That's not coming out now. We'll do that in a little bit. I don't have my really tiny 05 key on me. Slip that back up there. Next, I want to pull the trigger frame, but first I'm going to get the eyes loose from the eye covers here. So we go back to our 2mm. I always like to attempt to do them first this way instead of getting the full crank on it, just in case it's a little loose, a little sloppy. You're not going to round it out as easy. You don't have as much torque. Well, the spring felt pretty good. The eye cover, a little dirty. The spring, don't lose your springs. Put my finger in there, pull the detent out. That's grody, but we're going to clean them off. Pop that. This eye is toast. Okay, so he's going to need a set of eyes. See the other side's going to do. Let's put a finger on it as I'm loosening it. Come on. This side's still intact, but these are kind of done. I'm going to pop the eyes out, take my little pick, bring it there gently in the breech, and push. I wouldn't do this if the eyes were still good, because you might damage your eye with something that sharp in there, but because they're the one side's gone, we can pretty much say these are done. So next, I'm going to pull the trigger frame off. I don't really have to worry about my eyes anymore. Before I was trying to keep them protected as I went. I pull the 3mm socket or Allen wrench out. I already knew that was loose. I kind of felt it wiggling, so. Okay, let's break that away. Trigger itself feels pretty bad, so let's got a little 1.5mm Allen out. Ooh. Are you a 2? So that's a little stripped out. Well, of course it is. Let's see if a standard size can get in there, because it's a little stripped. Ooh. Oh, that's that weird thread. That's why that's there. You are a pain right now. One second. Get my little punch. I like to use this little hammer on these punches because it doesn't deliver much blow. It's very hard to overstress what you're doing with it. But yeah, that's toasty. Take this old battery I have lying around. Momentarily, every once in a while, you got to clean your workbench up. Just gets overwhelming. Take our parallel grip pliers again. Great tool, no marring. That needs to get polished up a little bit. The rust is bleeding off this one. This is rough. This is going to make this marker a whole lot smoother to pull the trigger. Once we clean this thing up, dip it in our bath, wipe it off. Trigger frame as well. It's very crusty, needs to get a little better. Now these two are a kind of an ingenious system. If you look at the trigger, top of the trigger has these two pins here. These pins correlate with these two veneer dials here. So you can dial in your trigger at will. And it's a great system to do it. No tools to do it. And it's very unique to Angels, and it just worked great. I know now it doesn't matter so much because everyone shoots ramping. But back then when everyone shot semi, or something close to semi, this is a great system. Just a little piece of tin pressed into position, serve as the notch, and a piece of plastic that was injected and molded together. It's a good little system. Sometimes they come out apart like that. Sometimes they come out together, and sometimes they come out apart. Just always understand that the little clickers go inwards. Where you have this divot for them, for this part, back side of them. They just clip on the end of the wheel. Like that. Not rocket science to get those out or in. Up here is the actual eye carrier. They're the eye covers. That needs a soak. These are gone. That's going to be impossible to save. So now, oh, that's sliding out. That's nice. My valve pin's sliding out real easy on me, so that's good. I'm going to pull off the VSA. This volumizer is on the wrong side to do anything. That doesn't feel too good coming out of there. That looks okay. Okay, so I see what he's doing. He's volumizing his LPR instead of his HPR, which, in my opinion, the LPRs are a lot stronger on these than the HPR, so I would always volumize this if I can and leave my LPR the way it is. That's got more than enough reaction speed to make up for the crappy HPR. If you give it some extra volume, you can make it a better marker for yourself. Let's move the flash tank, or they used to call it the flash tank, but now it's just the VSA, I guess. First you need the 3mm for this screw here. That's similar to your grip frame screws. I think it's the identical length to your back one on this generation marker. It's crusty as ever. This big one, there's a bigger one in there that's normally like a 4mm if I'm remembering correctly. Yep. That's hard to turn. So your trusty pliers. We have our O-ring here, which serves as a gasket. That's in good shape. That bolt's not too rusty. That's nice to see. They have our LPR pin, which again, we'll use our nice pliers. That pops right out. That's in pretty good shape too. Little rust, little surface rust on them, but not the end of the world. Move our other front plug. Use the 4mm Allen key. That was stupid of me. I forgot these are sprung with this on this generation. Front plug, here's your little spring centering device that they put together. Works pretty well for them. Valve pin, nothing crazy. Looks in pretty good shape. We're going to put a little oil on it and see if we can bring it to be very good. Because these definitely like to soak up a little bit of oil so they stay nice and sealing. You're going to see a problem with these a lot where they just start leaking. And if you keep them wet most of the time, they can stay sealed for a very long time. But this is one of the weaker parts of the Angel is this. Leave that off to the side for now. We're going to try to get the LPR assembly out now. Grab the Angel LPR tool. Bring it in. I like to free it a little bit. Then I bring the gun up, give it a couple whacks. And hopefully everything comes out. But in this case they didn't. That's some crusty looking lube. Get the O-ring pick in here. Keep your stack together. It's just easier to remember what's going on with it. Pull out the shims. It's got 3 of them in there. That varies depending on the Angel. If you have 3, the pressure always varies with them. Now I got to pull the LPR out. That just slips out the front. So I usually use half this old swab. It cleans it a little bit. Doesn't damage anything. You just pop it out like that. Definitely a lot of lube on it. Not great looking lube, but a lot of it. So we'll wipe that down, soap it up, and put those in the parts washer. That tube looks pretty good. Everything looks okay. The threads look good around the front plug cap, the front plug screws. Yeah, it seems to be in good shape as far as that goes. Can I get the feed neck off? Probably not. Doesn't really have to come off or anything, though. Let's just make sure all the parts are in it. Alright, so, yeah, it's grody. All the parts there, but it might need a soak just to loosen it up a little bit. I'm getting it. There we go. Really like this design. It wasn't a bad one to have a clamping feed neck. I guess it's simpler just to have a lever, but it looked pretty clean. Yeah, it's not coming off for me right now. I can hit that with something later to make it come off if I need it up. I really don't need to get rid of this. There's nothing it does to stop me. Okay, so the last things we need to do, pull the ram out, get the valve out. All the pins are out already. The ram, there's the 2 pins in the back. You can use a nice Angel ram removal tool. Ooh, that's a little crusty feeling too. See, around this time in, I think this came out in 05 or late 04, they switched to a non-rebuildable ram. So this, if you want to open it up, you really got to remove this front plug, which would be a pain in the ass. I'm sure you can get it to seal back up if you need to service it, but they're normally pretty strong. We're just going to give it some lube, and it looks pretty good. The ram shaft looks really nice. It seems like it's sealing. It's always harder to do these because there's 4 holes in them with 2 hands, but yeah, I can't seal that up myself. But looks pretty good. They switched over from a snap ring to an internal one, basically. That is this one up front here. This is what they call the snap ring now. It gives just enough to help let it build pressure before it shoots the ram forward. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to bring it up front like this. Take a little oil, put it on the shaft here, put it in the hole. I'm going to bring this back and spin it. Wow, the bumper disintegrated. Gotta give him a new bumper. Bring that back and spin it like that. Try to break the shear of the seal by giving it 2 axes to try to deal with. Bring it back here, do the same thing, and pull it forward. And if oil gets pulled in, if you go fast and oil gets pulled in, your ram's still holding up pretty well. Go the opposite way. See the oil squirt out of it? That's pretty good. It means it's sealing up decently. Hopefully it stays that way. But yeah, the ram's in pretty good shape. Not much more needs to get done with this. So the last thing is the valve. Let's pull out the front. That O-ring's a little grody. Place some O-rings, just clean it up. It's just a valve body, nothing really happens to this. We'll give it a good clean, as well as the marker, because it needs it. So I didn't get out because I didn't have my Allen key with me. Shame on me. But you get the gist of what's going on here. The next video, we'll just soap this up. I'm going to throw it in my parts washer, my ultrasonic cleaner. Gonna get nice and clean. Then we'll clean it down, wipe it down afterwards with denatured alcohol. All I use what is it? Dawn hand soap. Just the free and clear stuff for these. Doesn't really mess with aluminum at all. I really have no reason to remove the roto breach entirely. It actually looks pretty good. These aren't all rusty, which is great. I'm gonna put a little lube on them just because. Let them work themselves in. And yeah, we'll move on from there. And then you'll see me put this back together. Replace some of these parts. Do some of the tricks I like to do. See if I can get this apart yet. Yep. Bang. Little oil. Comes right out. And nothing really wrong with this. Just going to replace the O-rings with nice new ones. These are something... The stack, you can always look in the Angel manual. They are available online if you don't have yours. The stack is important on these. These are 2.5 mil. No, it's a 3. Always screw myself. Pull the screw out. I like to see if the balls and everything are okay in these most of the time. Get a little more oil in there, let it soak. I see the ball. We'll pull this out fully, make sure the O-rings are okay, basically replace all the O-rings in the HPR. It's not really worth keeping them. I can get that little air pressure later. And yeah, that's it for the disassembly video for this one. Stay tuned for a little bit more. I might put them all into one video. But as of right now, it's Andrew for FloryPB again. And be with you next time. Alright, so the marker's been completely broken down. Now I've put everything in my ultrasonic cleaner, wiped everything down after that with some denatured alcohol, and replaced some of the O-rings on some things. I tried to leave as much of that as possible for this video. I forgot about a couple things as I was doing it. And just made everything ready to get put back together. I got rid of all the grime. Polished up a couple parts, so I'll show you the things I polished. It just works a little nicer that way. And I like to build these things in modules. I like to put everything together, then put the body together, then put everything on it in pieces. It just works better for me. First thing I did was I replaced the destroyed bumper on the Ram. But that's all we did with the Ram there. Put it back together, and it's good to go. It's going to go back to the mark. It's going to work great. Put that up to the side for right now. I like to build the regs first. I do the most O-rings. I put the most O-rings on the regs. I always replace these. Some of the static O-rings, it's not really worth replacing if they don't look bad and they look like they're in good condition. They don't do anything besides seal. So if they still look like they're 100%, there's no point changing. They're not going to actually wear down or anything. So we're going to start building the mini reg back up. We're going to put the velocity adjusting screw back in it. Takes a number 3 or 3mm hex key. Just going to shove it in all the way. You see it come out the back end. First thing we're going to put is the ball bearing. Just drop it right down in. Now we have our carriage, actually, our actual seals on top, and this is what moves up and down. This is what moves up and down to set your velocity. We're going to replace this poly O-ring because they tend to die out through time, and I don't want that to gum up. So this is actually a 006 O-ring. We don't need anything special there. I just have a little cup of 006s that are Buna O-rings. They're durometer 70, so they're just standard Bunas. We'll just get that on there. Or fumble because we're on video. Get down there. The face seal looks good, so we don't have to replace anything there. Just zoom into that. Yeah, I don't know if my zoom works enough for this. It's a very tiny piece. But yeah, the face seal looks good. No problems there. We use a little bit of grease on this one. Use my grease. I'm just going to coat it kind of liberally. Doesn't really matter. It doesn't move by performance. It just moves to set your velocity. This goes in, face seal up. So the little black O-ring on top goes up. Drop that in. Take an Allen key and lightly push it down. Alright, so that part's in now. Now I like to back out on this screw a little bit. Just so it seats it far enough down for regular use. Now, the next thing we're going to work on is the piston itself. It's a tiny piston. One of the reasons why I say these are, one of the reasons why I say these regs are so bad in comparison to some other regs that are on the market is because of this piston size. It's so tiny. If you look at the LPR piston, see how much more area you have? And when you have a circle, the area is what matters when it comes to your force that you're going to generate on this piston going down. Force equals, or stress or pressure equals force, so load over area. So if you have a pressure, which you're putting in here, you times pressure by area. I'll write that down sooner or later to show you guys. You times pressure by area, and that's the force you're going to get to push this thing down. Force also equals mass times acceleration, which is the other really rough way to do it, but that's a rough understanding of the more force you get on this thing, the faster it's going to move. That seems simple, right? So the bigger your area, the more force you're going to generate at the same pressure. So this has a lot of area compared to this. And the other thing about a circle is it's, to get the area of a circle, you're talking about pi times diameter. So the distance from this side to this side of the circle squared over 4. That equals your area of your circle. Now what that means is it grows exponentially. So you get a significant more amount of area from a slightly bigger piston than a smaller one. So the bigger you make your piston, the more force it can develop, which is kind of what you want. That's one of the reasons why these mini regs are so poor as a regulator. The other part is this isn't a captured O-ring in the body. This is a completely dynamic O-ring sliding on this, so it doesn't work as effectively. But we're going to replace these two poly rings as well with the ring I like a little bit more. This small one here is a 006 again. And I'm going to replace that with an X ring. Or a quad ring, you can call it. I'll zoom into the bigger one because it's easier. Quad rings are a little bit trickier to install because they can be twisted. But once you get them installed right, and you just look at it and make sure it's all correct, once you get it installed right, it's a better ring for dynamic motion. For anything that moves, it takes less resistance to make it move. We're going to replace the top one as well. This top ring is the main piston ring, that's an 012. Again, we're going to replace that with an X-ring. Now this X-ring, I'll try to zoom in and show you what they look like a little bit if you've never seen one. Come on. Hope that's focusing for you. It's basically a ring that has a little groove in the middle and a little groove on all sides of it, so it makes more of an X than it does an actual O-ring or a circle. And what that does is it has less friction against the wall, so it breaks free faster, and it's just better for dynamic motion or a movement in your piston or your ram or something like that. The other thing is with this little groove, it stores the lube a little better, which is another good benefit of them. But because it has basically 4 tiny O-rings, you have to make sure it doesn't twist when it goes in, or else you're not going to get a seal. I'm just going to shove this in and see if we can get it to work. Now, these are very easy to put on externally, but internally they're a pain in the ass. I'm just going to twist that out, make sure it's all good. And the ring's on. So we got the better rings on it. I'm going to put a little lube on this, and then we're going to oil it down as well. Now at regs, because they deal with such high pressure, it's actually smarter to over-lube them a little bit versus like a spool valve mark where you want to put a very little amount of lube on just so you have enough lube to make it work, but not enough to cause friction. Regs see so much pressure and so much force that they can break through the friction pretty easily. We're going to put the spring stack back on it. We left that alone. Now I'm going to oil this down. Dab of oil there. I'm going to oil the springs. I don't think they generate too much heat, but they do kind of generate a little bit of heat because they're going to be touching each other and springing against each other. Put this upside down. Let's slide that in just like that. And yeah, that's down there low enough. We're going to take the snap ring that we bent back into position. That was another thing I did. Remember, the snap ring was actually bent out a little bit. We bent it back. It looks pretty good. It just sits up top so everything can't slide up and out. Little snap ring groove. Make sure it's in the groove. Alright, and the snap ring's in there, and this reg is fixed and in the best working condition it's going to be. It's going to be the highest performance that this reg's going to be able to give me. So I'm going to give this a little lube as well. I like to lube the threads always, and this top O-ring. Again, they don't move much, but it's always just nice to have a little bit of lube on that stuff. And that we're going to set it off to the side till we're ready to put it on. That's good to go. Next, we're going to run the LPR. Again, this is the bigger piston. This takes a 015 ring. I'm definitely going to put an X ring on this as well. That one on right. There's an O-ring in here, but this one it's so difficult to try to put a tiny X ring on an internal surface to me. So it's not even worth doing. It's going to take me an hour, and I might still not get it. I might just bang the shit out of the thing. I don't want to do it. This ring felt nice and tight. We're not going to deal with it because it didn't seem like it cycled a lot. What we did do is we polished this shaft here that's going to ride on this internal O-ring. If you really want to increase your performance, you go get, this is an 007, I'm pretty sure, in here. Get a Buna 007 O-ring that is 50 durometer. That would actually also help with making it break free a little easier. But again, these are very good regs. This is one of the biggest LPR pistons you're going to find, so it's one of the best regs for an LPR. What we did to help this, though, is I always polish up this shaft here that's going to ride against this O-ring. Now, after you polish something with your polisher, what you always have to remember is the polishing wax that gets left over, the residue, that's an aggressive wax. That has little particles in it that's going to continue to polish it if it keeps moving. So then what we do is we wipe it down really good, and then I wipe it down again with denatured alcohol to make sure I get all the residue from the polishing compound off of it. And that should be good to go. So we're going to take the spring stack for this. First, let's give it a little lube, sorry. Gonna pop that. Gonna dab a little bit of lube in here. And do that. All right. Now this oil and this lube that I'm using is based off the same compound, so they really mesh well together. Solely because I make this grease out of this oil. I just add a lot of PTFE to it, PTFE powder. And a couple additives, some admixtures. Get that nice and greased up, nice and slick. So now one thing we forgot with that. There were some spaces in it. We're going to figure out what the actual pressure is running. I like to run these markers probably around 75 to 80 PSI. A little bit less if you have something crazy going on, like a different valve. But that's a pretty dependable number for me, in my opinion. So next thing we'll do is the valve. I'll just talk about this quickly. There's two O-rings on the valve. This back O-ring doesn't do too much. It helps seat it, but most of the pressure is going to be seen on this front O-ring. If this one fails, you're going to have pressure leak through and go out the top of your gun. And because it's not a dynamic O-ring, doesn't move much, I replace this. This is an 015 O-ring. I replace this with a 50 durometer O-ring, which seals a little bit easier than a 70 durometer O-ring. It's not as strong. It doesn't last as long. But this doesn't move, so it doesn't really see anything. So I like to replace it with a 50 durometer. And I replace any large body O-ring with a 50 durometer O-ring solely because it's better for sealing and it's not a moving part. So it doesn't need to have the extra strength of the 70 to keep itself together. It's just a softer O-ring that can seal a little bit nicer. Just a little bit of lube, doesn't need much. Again, it's not going anywhere. The cup seal, we replaced the cup seal that was in it because that was pretty much gone. I've had this one soaking in oil a little bit. There's the spring and the carrier. I'll leave that off to the side as well. That set's done. So now this whole tube's done. This tube's done because we're not doing a battery in this marker. So all the tubes are ready to go. The flash tank, just get a little oil on it, or a little grease on it rather. Pull it out, get some grease on the O-ring, just helps it a little bit. This is a silicone-based and PTFE-based grease that I'm using. So the O-rings really like silicone. It helps them it just helps them maintain themselves throughout the years. Let me make sure I got the screws for this. I'll just put them in like here just so I have the screws when I put the gun together, when I put the marker together. Alright, next thing we'll just assemble the trigger frame real quick. That's a simple one. We need the board. I need the buttons. And I need the two screws. Where are you? There it is. Now, board screws from WDP were always Phillips head screws. If you see a different one, it means someone changed it through time. It's not really a problem. It's just kind of weird. That was the only thing that was Phillips head in the whole marker. So he's got clear buttons, whatever. The big one goes up top. That's for your eye or your LED to show through. I'm gonna clean the oil off because my hands are a tiny bit greasy. Microfibers are great to help clean this kind of stuff. This is the Virtue board, which is kind of a cool board. You don't see them very often. Neat the guy put these in. So I'm going to put the board in. I'd like to put the board in before I put the trigger on, if possible. Just because this gets a little tricky with the micro switch up there. Wrong screwdriver. Oy. All thumbs. I'd like to see a backing pad, but he doesn't have one. But all the metal is covered in anodizing. That is non-conductive, the aluminum oxide. Now these don't have to go in very hard, very tight. Just put them until they fit. Make sure the buttons click. Make sure the LED looks like it's lined up. Everything looks pretty good. Nothing's torquing crazily. Alright. So do the trigger as well. We polished up the trigger pin. Got some of that grime and shit off it, so it's going to act smooth now, hopefully. It's the intent of it. And where's this screw? Here's that weird British screw that's actually a standard thread. Well, standard dimension thread and a standard Allen key. We're going to bring the trigger in. Line it up. Take a small Allen. Push it down fully. Get my standard set. I believe it's a 1/16. Nice and smooth. Way it's supposed to be. Good to go with the trigger frame now. Put that back off to the side. Now the only thing left is to assemble the body and put all the stuff on the body. Take these O-rings, get rid of them. So we got the body back. Always make sure that you have this seal, whether it's the older markers that had just the O-ring or the newer ones with this pad. Always make sure the seal's there and make sure it's glued down if it's not. Well, like this one's coming up a little bit. Look at that. Ultrasonic cleaner kind of got it moved a little bit. So we get our cloth. A little denatured alcohol. Dig around in there. Get the surface prepped to re-glue. Not bad. Another thing I keep around is a Q-tip. Alright, that's looking pretty clean. Grab a clean piece of my rag. So you always got to prep these things, make sure they're set up right, ready to go. We're going to wipe this down too, the back of the seal. Just clean off any grease on it. I like to use Loctite 411. It's the super glue that I prefer. It's an impact resistant glue. Put a very thin layer on it. You don't want it to pop out and get all over your hands. Just a little dab will do you with this. Work kind of fast. Press the seal back in. I like to press it down there, clamp it down a little bit. Inspect it. Good to go. We had seals in there for a long time going forward. Never want to lose that seal. Your efficiency goes to shit. Your velocity goes to shit. It gets inconsistent. You always need this seal, and you want this thing to be as tight as you can make it. The next thing, staying with the breech. The other thing I like to do, a lot of guys like to try to center this roto breech in this position. I don't like doing that because it opens the gap up. I want to make the gap in the front as small as possible because the bolt doesn't have any O-rings. So any air that gets around the bolt is going to come out this gap. So the smaller you make that gap, the better it is for you going forward. The less air you're going to lose to nothing. So we're going to adjust these two screws. Going to tighten this up as much as we want to, just to make it tight. The other thing that happens is this tries to rock up a little bit when you're shooting because the air is coming up and punching through. And you lose a little efficiency that way as well. So it's not worth losing this efficiency if we can help prevent it a little bit. So let's get that Allen key again, the standard Allen key. Now I like to look at it at a light. I know you can't see that. And see what my gap is. This is adjusted forward kind of right now, which is nice. Let's just tighten it down a little bit. I wonder if you can hear that. It's a tiny little scrape noise, which I'm trying not to get. This is a pretty nicely machined one. A lot of times when they're machining this, because of tool flexure, this bottom section is a little bit higher than this top section, so it always scrapes a little bit. If I was ever going to anodize one of these and do it real well, I'd flatten this out as best as possible to really get a tight seal on this face. So I'm going to screw this in just a hair. Get a little more tension on this thing, or compression rather, but good. I don't hear any. It's nice and smooth action. If I look at it in the light, the gap is bigger in the back than it is in the front, so I brought this as forward as I feel comfortable doing without scratching the anodizing. We'll put the standard Allens away. Now I do start putting the solenoid in, getting the back together. But to get the back together, we got to put the ram in first. Take our ram. Inspect the O-rings, make sure they're all good. They all look perfect. Give them a little lube. All right. Always go slow, putting the O-rings past the threads here. They will cut them up. Once you get past, get your ram tool. Gently do it until you feel it threading in. Never want to cross thread these things. The threads are fine. They're metric. They're hard to fix in America. I'll open up the breech so you can see where the ram's sitting. Now we're going to get the bolt we're going to use. We're going to use this prototype bolt for this one. I can use that right now. We're going to use this bolt. This is a new soft face bolt for him. Well, new to him. We're going to come down. What we want to hear is a good defined click that pushes the bolt forward a little bit to suck up some of this rollback gap that we get with an Angel. So we bring this ram forward a little bit more. Starting to feel it click up a little bit. See if we can go a little bit deeper, see what we get. Now we gotta come back a tiny bit. That's what we want, that little click. Alright, so that's set up pretty nice. That puts the bolt as far forward as we can get it, which is what we're trying to do. Avoid that rollback issue. The soft face bolts also helping us keep the paint in line on this stack. So rams in. We'll get the solenoid. We just put that off to the side. We didn't do anything to it. We'll make sure the manifold's clean. Give it a little grease. Slip that back on correctly. Make sure everything's free and clear in there, which it is. Gonna drop it down till it clicks in. There's two little pins at the bottom of the manifold that fall into two pinholes in the body. Bring the wires down like that. Get them out of the way. Now it was great when they switched over to the A4s and the A4 Flies, because they got rid of that separate little piece that had to go in here to keep the solenoid down. They went straight with this design, which the top plate is keyed in. Make sure you're not hitting your wires. Slide it in like that. This is a 2.5 set screw in here. Push it all the way forward. And tighten your set screw down, and it tightens your top plate, and it tightens your solenoid down. Great design idea with this. Don't over tighten it, but give it enough snug to seal up for you. So now the solenoid's in place. We're going to take the little transfer sleeve. See how that works? You got this big hole in the bottom that coordinates with getting wires through here. You got this little key part up top here, which keys in to that slot there. So slide the wires through. Put them in the tube. And that keys in nicely like that. Take our little pick and gently get the wires out if we can.